Good afternoon. My name is Alex Lamont, and I'm a Legislative and Policy Coordinator for the New York State Association of Counties. On behalf of our Executive Director, Stephen Aquario, our President, Jack Marin, and the rest of the NYSAC team, I want to thank our members and the guests who have joined us today for attending our virtual Legislative Conference webinar on the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and some of the state programs that are available to help your county achieve its climate goals. Before I introduce our speakers and sponsor, Jeanette, are there any housekeeping items we want to cover?
Yes, just a couple, Alex. I want to let everyone know that we will be recording this session, as we always do, and posting it on our website later today with a recording and a PDF of our slide deck. Also, if you would like to submit questions for the Q&A period which will happen after the presentations, please do so through your dashboard. Just click on the questions tab and you have the ability to type in your questions and we will get to them throughout the Q&A. Alex?
Thank you, Jeanette. Now I want to thank our webinar sponsor, CPL, for sponsoring this session. CPL is the county source for architecture, engineering, and planning. From beautiful parks, hospitals, and schools to more efficient roadways and waste management facilities, their versatile project experience demonstrates how they enrich every community they touch. From structures to spaces to systems, CPL is deeply experienced in every facet of making communities beautiful, functional, and sustainable. We're very appreciative of their support in helping to educate the hundreds of county officials who have joined us for our legislative conference series. Thank you. Now our special speakers for today are Sarah Stern-Crawwell, Jennifer Menier, and Brian Statten. In her capacity as the Director of the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure at the New York Department of State, Sarah Crawwell is serving as the Chair of the Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel to the New York State Climate Action Council. She also leads some of the state's signature community planning programs, including the Downtown Redevelopment Initiative, Brownfield Opportunity Area Program, and the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program. An accomplished urban planner, Sarah has 20 years of both public and private sector experience in community and regional planning with a focus on sustainable and equitable development. She is a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners and holds both a bachelor's degree in environmental ethics and a master's degree in urban and environmental planning from the University of Virginia. Jennifer Menier is a senior project manager and acting team lead for the Clean Energy Siting Team at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, or NYSERDA, where she helps lead and guide local government officials through best practices and appropriate local laws and permitting procedures for solar and battery energy storage. More recently, she has been supporting NYSERDA's new Build Ready program, conducting outreach to local government officials and communities with underutilized lands that may be suitable for hosting renewable energy projects. Finally, as Senior Director for Origination and Structuring, Brian Statten leads the New York Power Authority's Retail Power Supply Program under its expanded authority legislative mandate. Created in 2019, Expanded Authority is an ambitious addition to NYPA's traditional economic development supply programs. It provides new and exciting customers with a competitively priced blended power product that combines market-based energy and capacity with NYPA renewable attributes to help them achieve their sustainable energy goals. Statten also manages NYPA's large-scale renewable supply power program, under which NYPA will source and manage long-term offtake agreements for energy, capacity, and renewable attributes from new wind, solar, and storage assets to be built in New York. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Crawwell.
Unmuted, okay. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, and it's a real pleasure to be here today together with my colleagues from NYSERDA and NYPA. My name is Sarah Kroll. I'm the Director of the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure for the New York Department of State, and I'm currently serving as Chair of the Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel of the New York State Climate Action Council on behalf of Secretary of State Rossana Rosado. I want to thank you for inviting me here, and allowing me to provide you an update on the CLCPA and on the role of and the work of our advisory panel. I'd like to start with a quick overview of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, often called the CLCPA, or simply New York's Climate Act. The CLCPA, which was signed into law in 2019, builds on almost a decade of climate leadership by Governor Cuomo. The Climate Act's targets are based on the latest climate science and are among the most rigorous of any major economy in the world, aiming for at least 85% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2050 and setting an ambitious path to carbon neutrality. The Forward-Thinking Climate Act also commits to environmental justice, to lifting up the disadvantaged communities, and to a just transition from a fossil fuel to a clean, renewable economy. The holistic economy-wide approach espoused by the Act will transform New York's economy, create new jobs, stimulate industry and innovation, and build more resilient communities to benefit and protect all New Yorkers. Can I have the next slide, please? So, as I said, the aggressive goals set by the Climate Act, which are some of the most aggressive in the world, were set in recognition of the real and immediate threat of climate change and the importance of transitioning to a green economy. So in addition to overall greenhouse gas reduction goals, the Act requires 100% zero carbon electricity by 2040, and it also sets ambitious goals for offshore wind, distributed solar, and energy storage. Next slide, please. The CLCPA also created, in order to implement these goals, the first statutory Climate Action Council, or the CAC. The CAC is charged with adopting a climate action plan or a scoping plan that will set a roadmap to achieve the bold clean energy and climate agenda set by the CLCPA. The 22-member Climate Action Council is co-chaired by DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos and acting President and CEO of NYSERDA Doreen Harris. Members include the heads of 10 state agencies and authorities, as well as governor and legislative appointees. A number of sector-specific advisory panels and working groups were formed to inform and support the work of the council. The 7 advisory panels, of which land use and local government is one, have been charged with providing the council with sector-specific recommendations of policies, regulations, programs, planning, and R&D activities to consider as the council develops a scoping plan. Also recognizing the disproportionate impact of climate change on disadvantaged communities, the CLCPA requires that at least 35% of the benefits of clean energy and energy efficient initiatives accrue to these communities. To that end, the Just Transition and Climate Justice Working Groups were formed. They're working across sectors to ensure that the climate action fully incorporates equity and environmental justice and will lead to a just transition of fossil fuels. Next slide, please. So the timeline is pretty aggressive. The draft scoping plan is actually due to be released January 1st of 2022, which is a lot closer than it sounds at the moment. The final plan will be due a year later, January 1st, 2023. In that period between, in 2022, there will be a series of public outreach and drafts and engagement to finalize the plan. But before that, we need to get to the draft plan. So the CAC initiated its effort in mid-2020, complicated slightly by the challenges of the global pandemic, but nevertheless, things got started. Advisory panels were formed also last August and got started work right away to define their scopes and begin to elevate sector-specific policies and initiatives to achieve the state's climate agenda. The panels will provide the CAC with their recommendations, which are being developed now, in April and May. From there, the council will launch an integration analysis as it evaluates and compiles the panel's recommendations and prepares a draft scoping plan. Can I have the next slide, please? So as chair of the Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel, I've been working with our panel members since August on preparing recommendations for the CAC that focus on advancing efficient land use and supporting local government in reaching the climate goals. The Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel is comprised of 12 members, including myself, Mark Lowry, who's the Assistant Director of the Office of Climate Change at DEC, Jessica Basher from PACE, Jamie Burchard-Toman, who is with Bergman, a planning consulting firm, and was with a regional planning commission previously. Kevin Law, Katie Malinowski, Ed Marks, former planning commissioner of Tompkins County, Kathy Mosher from Open Space Institute, Priya Melgaonkar from Hester Street Collaborative and was from NYCHA, Gita Nadan, Juan Osorio Cortez, and Eric Walker. Our diverse panel does bring a variety of areas of expertise to the table, and we recognize the importance of broad engagement, and we made a really strong effort throughout to encourage and invite the input of the general public and particularly municipal leaders from throughout the state to help inform our work. In the short time I have with you today, I just want to give you the overview of the goals that are guiding the work of the Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel and share just a few of the recommendations that have been proposed and are being considered by the advisory panel. This slide sort of summarizes the goals, lists the goals that we've identified that were developed over the past few months and are guiding recommendation development. These include supporting local and regional initiatives to promote efficient land use and smart growth, fostering the expansion of low, no carbon energy efficient mobility options, maximizing carbon sequestration, building capacity at the regional level, and providing support to municipalities, increasing energy efficiency, promoting energy efficient retrofits, accelerating development and adoption of clean energy sources, including solar, and reducing emissions associated with municipal operations, buildings, facilities, and fleets. Can I have the next slide, please? So as I mentioned, the recommendations on this and the following slides are not comprehensive and they're definitely not final, but they are indicative of the direction that the panel is heading and some of the priorities that have risen through our panel's work. And all of these are the recommendations that have come out of those goals that were on the last slide. One area that's been of central focus throughout the process is the importance of smart growth planning at the county and regional level. As I'm sure you'd all agree, coordinated planning is key to achieving efficient land use patterns. To this end, our panel is considering a range of initiatives, including enabling designation of priority development areas and priority conservation areas at the county and regional levels, and incentivizing investment in those areas. Looking at updating the 2013 NYSERDA regional sustainability plans, as well as expanding Department of State's, our countywide resiliency planning grants, to really accelerate county level smart growth planning, aligning state funding priorities with all of these plans, and creating centralized and user-friendly repository of data, which can be accessed by regional, county, and local planners to help develop land use plans and zoning codes that do meet the goals and outcomes that are desired under CLCPA. And finally, working with IDAs in each region to expand tax incentives and policies in their uniform tax exemption policies to incentivize infill and downtown redevelopment. Can I have the next slide, please? We also recognize that municipal government plays a really critical role across the board in reaching climate goals, and also that local government needs support. So a central focus of our panel has been on building capacity and providing the resources and services that local government needs to be effective partners in this important effort. Some of the things that the initiatives and proposals that we've been considering include expanding the scope and reach of the NYSERDA regional coordinators in partnership with DEC and DOS and other agencies as appropriate to provide easy and clear access to smart growth planning and zoning technical assistance and capacity building. We are also talking about developing possibility of developing a statewide dashboard of community greenhouse gas emissions inventories, which would help promote local climate action planning, would also help communities monitor their equity considerations, measure their progress, and also would ensure data consistency. We're also talking about compiling guidebook or resources that that summarize all of the state programs relative to sustainable community development and clean energy development, making all of that accessible in a central and easy to use form, likely online, and conducting a review of relevant programs in the state to improve access and ease coordination across programs. So we really want state assistance to be provided in a simple and synergistic way that's easily accessed by communities throughout the state. Can I have the next slide, please? And of course, clean energy deployment is central to this effort. Our panel is focused on the role of local government in striving toward the goals of net zero carbon neutrality by 2050, also 70% renewable electricity by 2030, and 6,000 megawatts of distributed solar by 2025, all of which are going to require a concerted effort to expand development of solar and other clean energies. So the recommendations our panels are considering to this end are designed to facilitate and promote deployment of clean energy in an equitable manner that maximizes local economic benefit and minimizes environmental impact. Some of these proposals under consideration include provision of tools and resources, such as statewide mapping to help municipalities undertake a comprehensive evaluation of the potential for clean energy development in their communities, and to plan proactively in a way that maximizes local benefit and minimizes impacts on lands with high quality soils and other competing uses. We're also looking at providing opportunities to provide local governments with other tools and resources they need to streamline permitting process for solar and other clean energy technologies at a variety of scales, and to support adoption of the New York State solar permit, provision of model local laws, and other similar templates and tools. We're also focused on expanding CCA programs in which communities do choose 100% renewable energies and opportunity to provide affordable clean energy throughout the state. We're also looking at allowing counties to authorize and form CCA programs directly as a potential avenue to accelerating the availability of community choice aggregation for more New Yorkers. We're also recommendations are being proposed to provide technical support to help local governments develop municipal clean energy projects, and we're evaluating options to reduce the cost of interconnection for development of clean energy on publicly owned sites. Can I have the next slide, please? And finally, we want to encourage and support local governments to demonstrate leadership by greening their own facilities and operations. We recognize that competing priorities challenge all communities, but especially small resource-constrained localities that struggle with tight budgets and limited staff capacity to take local climate action. So it's really critical that the state provide the needed support to help these communities take a leadership role. So the state already has a framework in place to guide and direct local government in all sizes to take the most appropriate actions for their municipality to achieve maximum energy efficiency. Those are the Clean Energy Communities program through DEC, and Clean Energy program is the NYSERDA program, sorry, Jen, and the Climate Smart Community program through DEC. Both provide that sort of framework and technical assistance to communities, and we're looking at opportunities to expand and extend those programs to reach even more communities throughout the state. We're also considering expansion of the direct technical assistance, guidance, and financial support that the state offers to localities through a whole variety of programs, including NYSERDA's Regional Coordinator Network and NYPA's Clean Energy Solutions that help communities with things such as LED lighting and building efficiency. And also particular importance is increasing support for these small resource-constrained and underserved communities through all of these programs. So other Other policies that are under consideration include opportunities to support at all levels on all sizes of municipality, electrification of municipal and school fleets, encouraging municipal benchmarking, supporting local efforts to increase waste reduction, recycling rates, and educational campaigns. So a whole sort of host of opportunities exist to really help local governments take a leadership role. Next slide, please. Oh, and next slide. I'm sorry, this is a duplicate. So that as I said, those are just some of the recommendations that are being considered. Those again are drafts. They're being considered. They are not final. And they're only a subset of what the land use and local government advisory panel is considering. And of course, all of the other advisory panels are looking at other areas and other types of recommendations. So I encourage you to join us as this process continues. In the next month, advisory panels are going to be working particularly hard. This is a really critical time. They'll be refining and finalizing initiatives and policies to convey to the CAC. So I want to stress again that what I've presented is still in development, and also stress that county governments are key partners in this effort. And I encourage you to follow the progress of the Climate Action Council, of our panel, of all the advisory panels, and to log on to our meetings, share your ideas, your concerns, and your feedback with us. There are a lot of ways to do that. You can track the progress of the CAC and find out when all the latest meetings are, and learn about how to submit your comments at climate.ny.gov. Just a few of the upcoming events I wanted to flag here are the Climate Action Council is actually meeting tomorrow from 3 to 5. Everything is virtual, everything's online. So all you need to do is go to the website. It'll tell you how to log in. We have 2 upcoming land use and local government events. Next week and the week and the following, on March 2nd, we're hosting a local officials roundtable. It's an invited roundtable, but members of the public are invited to attend and participate and submit comments in the chat box of the teleconference. March 8th, we are having a public engagement session, and at that point, we are inviting folks to actually submit comments or to provide statements. There'll be an opportunity to see the status of where we are and to provide feedback. Also, you can submit comments to our panel anytime at the email on the slide, lulg@dos.ny.gov. That brings me to the end of this presentation. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from everyone and hope you all are able to join us and provide feedback.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a very great deep dive into the Climate Act and the Land Use and Local Government Advisory Panel. As a reminder, if you have a question for any of our speakers, please type it into the questions panel of the webinar dashboard. Jen, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, assuming you can hear me well, I am ready to go now. And if you don't mind, we already sort of did some intros, so I might as well just skip right to the next slide. Great, thank you. So first things first, I'm guessing most of you are interested in knowing what is Build Ready. Well, it was first announced in April of last year as part of the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, along with a couple other things, but it's a pretty unique program, and we're really excited about it. What's different about this program compared to what NYSERDA normally would be doing is it puts us in the shoes of a renewable energy developer for the first time. If you're familiar with NYSERDA at all, we're typically focused on providing financial incentives and technical assistance for the private sector to implement clean energy projects. And now we're actually going to be behind the wheel and sort of driving some of these renewable energy projects ourselves for the first time. Where it comes from is, we recognize that a lot of communities have underutilized land sitting around, not generating revenue, with limited or perhaps no interest from the private sector for development. But some of these sites might be great fits for renewable energy development, but for some impeding factor like brownfield remediation, for example, that the private sector is either unable or unwilling to take on for a variety of reasons. So Build Ready is designed to step in and de-risk these sites, do the pre-development and permitting work necessary to prepare the sites for renewable energy development, and then auction off fully de-risked sites to private developers and get revenue and benefits flowing into host communities, turning sites that might have previously been a liability to communities into a revenue generator, and with little or no additional demands on municipal resources. So that's the super high level, what it is. And I want to emphasize that NYSERDA is committed to ensuring that communities are supportive of any of the projects that we're working on. And to that end, some of you've probably already talked to me, but we do plan to be reaching out early and often in the planning of any of the projects that we're undertaking as part of this program to make sure that we get as much benefit flowing to the community as possible. So what do these sites that I'm talking about look like? Right now, mostly to ensure that we're developing the most cost-effective projects right off the bat. It's still a very new program, as I mentioned. Right now, we're focusing our efforts on properties that are 65 acres or larger. It's not a hard cutoff, but it's a rule of thumb, and that are underutilized in some way. So some examples you can see here include dormant electric generating sites like retired coal-fired power plants, for example, former industrial sites, abandoned commercial sites, perhaps existing commercial sites that have excess land, brownfields, closed landfills, or any other underutilized sites. Ideally, they'll also have relatively flat or gently sloping terrain. And if you're curious, now that we've had a little time to get the program off the ground, some of the sites that we're currently exploring that we've made public on our website, they sort of made it past the, you can actually go back to the previous slide. They're not part of the slide, I'm just saying them. Some of the sites we're currently looking at include former correctional facility in Livingston County, another site in Ogdensburg, the city of Ogdensburg, and in the town of Lisbon. We're exploring there. It's near the Bridge and Port Authority, an old industrial site in the town of Plattsburgh, and an old mine in St. Lawrence County, just to give you an idea of some of the types of sites that sort of meet these criteria that you see here. So you can go ahead to the next slide now. Now that you know what we're looking for, you might be interested in hearing how we go about finding the sites and what we do with them from there. So ideas from sites can come from any number of sources. NYSERDA has been doing a top-down analysis. We might get lists of brownfield sites from our colleagues at DEC or Department of State, or perhaps some federal partners, just lists of underutilized sites across the state, and do some high-level top-down screening that way. But we're also getting site nominations from communities, local officials, really anyone is able to submit site suggestions to us if they sound like they're a good fit for the program. And once NYSERDA has a somewhat promising site on our radar, we'll start going through this sort of funnel that you see here. We'll initiate a desktop review of site viability. That might include discussion with the site owner, the person who nominated the site, and of course, local government officials as well. We'll also be looking at the characteristics of the site itself to determine if it's a good fit to host a renewable energy project. Some of those considerations include looking at the slope of the land, the maximum buildable acreage, proximity to existing transmission lines, and whether or not those lines have any room left on them to accept more generation. And of course, any environmental constraints at the site, like wetlands or perhaps sensitive or endangered species. We would also look at what the existing use of the land is, if anything, and the potential for the site to support other services and perhaps be co-located with a renewable energy project and not be just a 100% renewable energy project. And of course, last but definitely not least, we'd be looking at compatibility with local zoning laws. So if after that initial desktop assessment, we determine that a site is still viable, we'd likely try to enter into a site access agreement with the site owner to get some boots on the ground and begin some on-site viability analysis. From there, it's really an iterative process of more and more detailed assessments and studies to determine if the project's going to be viable. And any point along the way, we could hit an insurmountable roadblock, which is why I think the iterative nature of this process is important, not just from the technical side of things, but also with engaging the community and getting input from that angle. We want to make sure these projects are going to work for everyone. So if all goes well, and these sites make it through all of the iterative assessments and designs and things like that, NYSERDA would work to secure permits and approvals for the projects, either local permits, or if the projects are large enough, we would be an applicant to the state permitting office, the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, and do it that way. Once a site is fully de-risked and permitted through one of those two pathways, we intend to auction them off such that build-ready projects would be competitively awarded to private sector renewable energy companies, and they would be the ones to construct, own, and operate the facility going forward. Landowners and communities would be involved throughout the process, and I think it's important to note that after the auction, the work is not done. It may be the bottom of the funnel here, but and it's on my to-do list to update this graphic, perhaps to make that a bit more clear, but there will still be plenty of coordination and follow-up with either the local permitting authority or the Office of Renewable Energy Siting to ensure that projects are designed and constructed in accordance with any of the permit requirements and conditions. And I'm going to sound maybe a little bit like a broken record, but throughout this whole process, we really do want to engage and collaborate with host communities, local governments, probably most of you that are on this call today, to make sure that everyone is excited about the direction the project is headed and that they feel they're able to provide valuable input early on. Next. So I think this slide does a pretty good job of showing what I was just describing. We want to be equal partners with both the landowners and the local government and community. In designing these projects, we will all work together to make sure the projects meet the needs of everyone involved and that the community doesn't just accept the project, but is actually excited about it. So everything that we all work on together would be transferred over to a private sector developer at the end of the process to build to our specifications. And again, of course, it would be in accordance with any local or state level permitting requirements, like I just mentioned on the last slide. We're not just going to be, handing over project plans and setting developers loose. Next. So I've talked a lot about making sure we provide benefits to the local communities and ensuring that they're excited about build-ready projects. NYSERDA intends to work collaboratively with local governments and other community stakeholders too, to design benefits packages that are tailored to the needs of whichever unique community we happen to be working in at the time. So to that end, we've put together an initial, what we refer to as a community benefits package, which you can see on the top right part of the slide here. It contains a high-level overview of the types of benefits a community might expect to see associated with a project like this. Of course, any one project won't come with every benefit outlined in this resource, but I think it's a great place to start thinking about what would be important or desirable for your communities. And that is available on our website, and I think I include some links to that later on. Next. This slide here it's basically an outline of what you might expect to find in that community benefits package resource that I just showed. So it includes options for different brownfield grants that are out there, federal and state. It outlines different financial benefits options that you might be able to see for a project like this. For larger projects, they may be able to take advantage of utility cost savings programs that are under development at the state right now. Of course, we'd always be looking to negotiate pilot agreements with communities, or perhaps on top of that, also host community agreements, which tend to be more flexible and can include projects or additional financial incentives for communities. We'll explore job opportunities, workforce development and job training, support for disadvantaged communities and veterans, and other benefits as well. Like I mentioned, the host community agreements can include any number of things like community improvements, recreational and scenic enhancements, and of course, throughout the entire process, technical support from NYSERDA. Next. So we'll work together to explore the universe of available benefits, prioritize them with community input, and see what we can accomplish based on the expected economics of the project. Next. I think it's important to note that while we may have a little bit more leeway as a state program to offer perhaps a sweeter pot than the private sector may normally be able to, we do still need to balance benefits with the project economics. So that's where all that collaboration comes in. Next. I did warn I may sound a little broken recordy, but that's okay. So this is a little bit of a repeat, but I do think it's important to sum up what I've gone through so far. It can be a lot. And I think the 4 bullets in the top right of the slide here do a pretty great job of that. So after we work with communities to identify sites, they'll undergo that design, permitting, and pre-development. Eventually, we'll auction them off to developers to construct and operate. And again, they will absolutely have to execute on any previously negotiated host community agreements, pilot agreements, or any other community benefits we've committed to. So even after transfer, NYSERDA plans to remain engaged throughout, offer technical assistance and support to the community, and make sure that these projects meet the high standards of our program. And another important point that I'd like to stress is that the Build Ready program is intended to supplement, not to replace, the work of the private sector. We don't want to displace them. We want to work with commercial developers, the same companies that will eventually be bidding on the sites after NYSERDA completes its development and permitting work. And so to the extent that NYSERDA might be exploring a potential site and then later learns of a legitimate interest in that same site from a private developer, we'll work with them to figure out a mutually beneficial path forward. Likely, NYSERDA will step away completely and let the private sector do what they do best. If their plans fall through and the site's up for grabs again, we might come back, but we definitely don't want to be in the way of private development. We're trying to supplement that work, not compete with it. Okay, so now that you are all Build Ready experts, you might be wondering how you can tell us about all the great sites that you have in mind now. So if you know of sites that seem like they might be a good fit, we'd love to hear from you. We're happy to talk informally or meet with anyone, but to ensure that we're able to accurately track and assess all of our incoming site nominations, once you feel you're actually ready to submit one, we do ask that all of the submissions come to us via our online site recommendation form. It can be accessed through the link shown here on this slide. It's pretty short, a simple form containing high-level basic information about the site and the site owner. It shouldn't take all that long to figure out what you need to be putting in there or to prepare for the input. One important piece of information is before you begin to enter information, it's a good idea to compile it all first, because the form will not save if you do partial entries and then try to come back later. You got to do it all in one fell swoop. Next. So I've mentioned a few times that NYSERDA is always available for technical assistance, and we want to help communities as much as we can to prepare for not just Build Ready projects, but any clean energy development in your communities. So as you may have forgotten by now, but at least heard in the intros, the other hat that I wear in addition to Build Ready is NYSERDA's Clean Energy Siting Team. Our job is to work with local governments all across the state to help them prepare for renewable energy development. So I can never give a presentation without at least including a plug for those resources and that technical assistance. So that's what you're seeing here. Many of you are probably familiar with our, sorry, I think the mailman might be here. Many of you might be familiar with our New York Solar Guidebook. It includes a model law, a municipal procurement toolkit, some resources for navigating the seeker process, a lot of the bullets that you see over on the right-hand side. We've developed a similar, albeit smaller resource for battery energy storage systems as well. Our team is always happy to do educational sessions, presentations, one-on-one phone calls, meet with your planning board, what have you. We're here for you. It's free. Take advantage of us. All of those resources are available online at the website there. I'm going to wrap up in a second here if you want to move to the next slide. In summary, send us your site nominations. We're really excited about the opportunity to work with communities all across the state to develop projects that we think are going to be a win-win for all involved. And if you're curious, the map here shows those first 4 build-ready sites that we're in the process of exploring. And these are sites that have made it past those first phases of feasibility analysis. They're certainly not the only 4 we've looked at. We've looked at hundreds, but we definitely want more and look forward to working with all of you. So please feel free to reach out anytime with questions. Next slide, and that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen, for that introduction to the Build Ready program and the Clean Energy Siting team. Next, we'll conclude with a presentation from Brian Statten and take your questions. Brian, whenever you're ready.
There we go, unmuted. All right, great. Well, thanks, Jennifer and Sarah for the setup. So I'm going to spend the next 10 or so minutes with a perspective from the private sector. So a little background first on NYPA. We're the New York Power Authority. We've got a long history going back to 1931 when FDR signed the legislation that established us. We offer a variety of clean energy solutions, generally including turnkey efficiency projects, as well as advisory services across areas, including efficiency and solar. We're also most well known for managing our economic supply programs, going back to the late 50s when we built the Niagara operation up on the Niagara River, as well as the St. Lawrence power plant. We generally supply power through low cost and green power programs that support clean energy and development, and work very closely with folks like NYSERDA to figure out the best way to bring on board new authorities. We are a state authority, which means we're self-funded and we don't rely on any taxpayer support. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are the country's largest public utility, and we strive to be out in front of the development for clean and sustainable energy. You know, we consider it part of our our mission and our mandate to help achieve some of the goals that have come out of the governor's office, particularly the sustainability and clean energy sustainability plan. That 70% of power produced by 2030 will come from renewable energy resources. That's part of as a state authority, you know, we operate in commercial markets, obviously, but we really take our sustainability mission very seriously. So it's something I feel very lucky to be a part of, an important part of what we focus on. So a little background: we have about 1,900 employees across 16 facilities and 3 state offices in the state. We operate essentially the backbone of the state's transmission infrastructure, as well as having a large amount of the state's power supply. We supply about 20% of New York's electricity, and the majority of that comes out of clean hydropower assets that have been in operation for some time. We do have some small fossil assets, primarily in the downstate area, but we are working with a lot of our city and state agency kind of government contract customers to talk about long-term transitioning to get, you know, to decarbonize the grid and replace those fossil assets with some more realistic renewable options that could replicate the base load characteristics of that fleet. Our main mission is to support the economic growth of New York State. Each year we invest about $300 million in energy efficiency projects across our customer base, and also through economic development programs. And we've supported the development and creation of 400,000 jobs, and that's a function of our our standard economic development programs, things like Western New York, Recharge New York, Preservation Power, the relationships we have with munis and co-ops, et cetera, in exchange for commitments of job creation, business siting, and economic growth. We sell our customers cheap hydropower. So that's kind of the meat and bones of what we've generally done. All right, so the next slide is up. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today, though, is a new initiative that the authority has launched. I joined the company in almost a year ago, spring of 2020, to stand up what we call the Blended Power Program, which is in support of our expanded authority legislation. Now, without getting into the weeds on what that means, expanded authority was a new legislative mandate that we took to the legislation chamber and the council and the governor's office that allowed us to run a new pilot program of retail energy supply that is a combination of market-based energy and capacity products, as well as renewable attributes that come off of our large hydroelectric fleet. So I'm going to get into deeper detail about who this product is for and what it really means. So we can go to the next slide, please. So Blended Power product is a green power option from NYPA that is focused on clean, reliable energy available at competitive rates. We think it's an excellent solution to help our diverse customer base meet their sustainability goals by getting full requirement power out of NYPA, but also driving towards the aggressive mandate of 70 by 30. So next, please. So this presentation focuses on the local governments, the county, state, villages. We're also selling to commercial entities that are part of our existing Recharge New York program. But for the moment, I'm just going to drill down and talk about local governments. So a lot of local governments are now newly eligible for this green blended power product. And the attractive element of this product, we think, is that no matter how big or small you are, if you're in the competitive market in New York State, then NYPA can price a product for you and give you the option to go from either a base load traditional brown power that you would get from a normal ESCO to other options where you can green up the full requirements. The nice thing about this is that there aren't any economic development or capital expenditure requirements similar to our existing economic development programs. That's an important distinction. So if you're outside of one of our hydropower zones, like Western New York, for example, to qualify for that program, you need to be 30 miles from the Niagara plant in and around the Buffalo area. This product is available to any local or state government entity in the state. We have two pricing options we could talk about. There's either a fixed priced option like a normal ESCO presents, and that's very ideal for meeting budget forecasting requirements and getting certainty of revenue and cost streams. Or you can also talk about a variable pricing model that if you have the ability to absorb some more of a price volatility or variability in your energy contracting needs. And the good news is that this is available to all municipality type customers, and even if you're on a competitive power contract through a non-government agency, when the contract comes up, we're aggressively marketing and pitching this out to a lot of business. We're building out a pipeline. So anybody with a power need, even if you're on an existing contract, we can talk about trying to catch up to the next cycle as it comes through. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is basically just a transition pretty picture. So the idea is that we're going to be able to help you meet your sustainability needs with pricing flexibility, price transparency, and more price stability in a state-owned agency partner who's trying to pursue a sustainability mission as well as a commercial mission. So we think we offer a very compelling contrast to a lot of the other ESCOs you might have done business with in the past. Next, please. So why should you consider this kind of product? Okay, so our pricing is competitive and straightforward. We strive to offer a very simplified contract, no fine print, no escalation clauses. The power comes directly from NYPA. We deliver it with price transparency and reliability, the same as we do with all of our other products and services. We've got the availability of fixed or variable pricing rates. We're flexible on your start term. There's a pretty simple onboarding process in which we gather up historical data from your existing utility. We run through our pricing model, and we're flexible in terms of start dates and terms. And we really take an approach that we think is one part energy advisory as well as one part commodity price supplier. Another compelling and comforting attribute is that it's 100% generated and delivered in the state of New York. All the green attributes that are fully blended in come out of our traditional New York-sided hydroelectric plants, primarily Niagara and St. Lawrence. We think we've been having a fair amount of robust interest as we stand up the operational elements, and we have been pricing a lot of prospects in the pipeline. Next slide, please. I guess that would be number 42. There you go. Thank you. So what happens next? Okay, so if you have any kind of interest, there's contact information at the back end. We get you a custom rate quote with your historical information. We talk about the various pros and cons of a variable or a fixed rate contract. We make a decision with respect to how incrementally the sustainability issue should take place. So we generally offer 51% or 100% of your load as a green element, where we green it up with the rec attributes out of our hydro plants. That generally will result in a more expensive price than the standard rate, which doesn't include any green, but you'll see as we talk about and show you some options, you'll see incrementally it's about a 5% incremental bump up. So not terribly expensive. We generally present out of the gate a 3-year contract where you have the opportunity to fix a rate for every 12-month cycle, and we can reprice for each subsequent 12 months. So, as month 12 approaches, we talk about new price set for the months 13 through 23, and again months 24 through 36. So, and we have a standard 90-day cancellation clause. So we're trying to design it to be as customer friendly as possible, but also provide very compelling market sourced and renewable attributes within our control. Next, please. So here's our commercial for the other products and services we talk about. Obviously blended power is just one of our clean energy products. When you work with us, we strive to take a partnership approach for all clean energy services that you might want to consider. So we bring construction expertise, turnkey project management. Together with our advisory services, we want to initiate and develop a long-standing, robust, clean energy relationship that serves your needs as well as ours. We've been doing this for more than 60 years. We have a long and stable history, a strong balance sheet. We have experienced project engineers as well as market specialists to help you meet almost anything, any challenge that you have on your energy and sustainability game plan. Next, please. So this is just another slide that says the same thing. 60 years plus, we're state-owned, we're stable, we're financially secure, and we're in this for more than just a commercial mission. We're in it for a sustainability mission. Our job is to work with all of our constituencies, expand our scope and breadth to help deliver on the sustainable mission that my colleagues presented at the top of the presentation. FLPCA and clean energy standard solutions are just one of the elements that are in my personal mandate to manage towards. Obviously we're as a state-owned entity that has to take care of our own financial health. We need to break even and recover costs, but we're in this for a sustainable growth mission, not a make the quickest buck as fast as we can, as some of the other ESCOs might be. And I think the next slide brings us closer to the end. here's just you might want to hit it again just so the other text cascades in, please. There you go. Busy slide. It just highlights all the various things that we do, have done with a high degree of competence. The customers we work with are our local government, state agencies, communities, and co-ops, as well as commercial businesses and not-for-profits. And there's really nothing we can't do with respect to helping manage and monitor every element of the life cycle of your energy needs, with a vision towards reducing carbon and delivering for a more sustainable future for the state. And I believe the next one is my last slide. Yep. Okay, here's my final slide. And this is generally contact information on how and when to get started. So my contact information is there at the bottom. My role is Senior Director of Origination and Structuring. That's just a long-winded way of saying, I'm in charge of the blended power program and making sure it succeeds. My colleague, Joe Crimmy, is the Key Account Manager who manages a team selling not only this product, but all the other products and services that are under the umbrella that I just described. So either one of us are a good first stop where you can reach out to us and learn more about the product and other elements that NYPA can help deliver to get New York where it wants to be by 2030. And with that, looks like we're close to the top of the hour. I'll turn it back, and I think we're going to do questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian, for that presentation on NYPA's blended power product. We have gotten quite a few questions from the audience, so we'll dive right into them. The first question is just a clarification question for Brian. Are there three sustainability choices with this product, standard, 51%, or 100%? Just looking for clarification here.
Yeah, that's our kind of out of the gate, but if you want anywhere from, if you want to talk about a lesser number because of a budget constraint, we would obviously entertain any number that makes the most sense for you. So if you want to go 75, that's fine, 25. I mean, really anywhere you want to go, we'll do that. We recognize that sustainability fights with budget all the time, especially this year. And usually budget wins, especially when you're talking about a 10-year deliverable like we are. So yeah, we have flexibility.
Thank you. This next question is for the whole group. We don't hear a lot of discussion about end-of-life strategies for wind and solar equipment, which will be a major challenge to deal with for all host communities. Can you talk more about how the state is preparing to decommission these projects and deal with equipment that's no longer useful?
I'll take a first stab at it. This is Jen Minier at NYSERDA. I don't have probably the greatest response or most straightforward response of here are all of the recycling facilities that you want to know about are located in the state. We don't have a whole lot of that going on yet. A lot of that is because of the long lifespan of these systems. We're looking 25, 30, sometimes more years for the useful life of a solar or wind system. It is possible to recycle them. I know it's happening a good amount, starting to pick up in Europe, and we fully expect that the recycling industry for these systems to pick up in the coming years as some of them start to come offline and be decommissioned. So there's that. I know you asked specifically solar and wind, but one very exciting thing that we haven't talked about is for battery energy storage. New York actually got its first battery recycling facility out in Rochester. So I think that is absolutely huge and just sort of shows that the state is thinking about these issues, and we do expect them to, come to fruition in the coming years. You just don't see a lot of it now, again, because of the long lifetime of these systems. As far as decommissioning goes, that's one of the things that NYSERDA's Clean Energy Siting Team can help with, and we always recommend that local governments, if they have a solar law, a wind law, a battery energy storage law on the books, that you have some strong decommissioning language in there. Oftentimes, we recommend including financial surety of some sort in the extremely unlikely scenario that a developer, abandons the project, which again wouldn't happen because whoever's financing it wouldn't let that happen. They make money by having the project be operational, but on the off chance that it does sort of fold, there's financial surety for the town to take over and decommission the system properly without having to incur this expense themselves. That's all I have for now. I could probably get, if someone's more interested in diving into the details of some of those issues, I'd be happy to connect offline.
Thank you, Jen. The next question, are wind projects eligible under either of these programs? So we also received a similar question, what about nuclear power?
Build ready is not limited to solar. So yes, we can certainly consider wind for build ready projects. I don't think it's going to be as common, but we certainly can, but not, build ready would not be doing nuclear.
Thank you. The next question is for Brian. Does blended power do the same thing as mega? How do they compare?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, Mega is a CCA, Community Choice Aggregation Administrator. So yeah, they are different. Mega is not a supplier like NYPA is. NYPA is a load serving entity, which means simply that we enroll a customer and we are responsible to the New York ISO to deliver that customer's needs. So we bill the customer at a fixed price, everything they use, we're responsible for supplying into the grid. So, but we do work with outfits like Mega because one of the mandates of the expanded authority legislation is for us to get our blended power program into the hands of as many community choice aggregation customers as we can. And I'm working with a few currently, and that's when we get involved with coordinating with Mega. So I mean, I would consider Mega and NYPA to be different, but they are a partner of ours because they do the work of managing a CCA aggregation organization, and as well as building up an RFP. And then what would then happen next is a group like NYPA or other ESCOs would have to partner up and respond to the RFP in a way that delivers on the product required by the RFP. So Mega is the consultant and administrator for a CCA, whereas NYPA would be a supplier or being on the supply contract. Is that satisfactory, or is there a follow-up?
No, that's great. Thank you, Brian. Our next question comes from Long Island. Is this green power available on Long Island, the LIPA area?
Again, another interesting and thorny question. Legally, it is. In practicality, it is challenging because if the question comes from someone who is on the island, then I'll be kind of covering familiar ground. But if you're not, LIPA essentially has what can only be described as some prohibitive cost adders that ESCOs must put into their contracts to buy capacity. Now, when deregulation occurred in the state of New York, LIPA entered into some 20-year contracts to buy power and capacity off of the generating assets that were previously part of its organization, and they were eventually saddled with some very high energy and capacity costs. So, as a mandate, if an ESCO or a NYPA, for that matter, attempts to serve power in one of the LIPA zones out on the island, we have to buy capacity from LIPA at a number which is about an adder of about 50 cents a megawatt hour, or no, I'm sorry, back it up. It's about $50 a megawatt hour. It's more like 50 cents a kWh. The point is that they're doing a cost recovery then, and I'm very sensitive to their problems because they need to recover their cost elements that are rolling through until 2023, 2024. So when we first approached LIPA about this program, their response was, great, we'd love to have you come on in, but you have to buy capacity for us. And that makes it impossible for us to show savings against LIPA. And that's the thorny issue that exists on the state of Long Island for anybody who wants to buy power from somebody other than LIPA. So we are currently negotiating with various county agencies, potential customers, and LIPA to try to see if we can come up with a resolution that meets everybody's needs. But as you can imagine, it's taking some time. So I hope that is not too disappointing of an answer, but it's the reality of where we are. I'd love to sell on Long Island, but we have to fix some of these structural issues before we can do that.
Thank you. Our next question is for whoever wants to take it. We have at least 3 solar projects in our county where the local transmission company, NYSEG, has indicated that they do not have capacity available. 2 of these projects were on county landfill sites. We are working to see if we can find a way to interconnect the largest of the projects, which is but while generation is fine, what is being done to increase transmission capability?
I'm not a transmission expert, but I don't hear anyone else, so I'll take a first stab. This is not an uncommon problem. And in fact, it's a problem that even NYSERDA is running into, on some of our build ready projects. We have this, the same issues anyone else would when we're trying to site these things. What I can say is part of the same act that created the build ready program back in April of last year, the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, also included a component to sort of kick off a transmission and grid study to help identify where some of these issues are and where upgrades are needed and that sort of thing. Again, I'm not an expert, but I can assure you that the state is well aware of these issues and working to resolve them. I don't know how much better I can do in this forum without pulling in someone who's more of an expert in that particular aspect.
Well, I mean, hey, it's Brian. I'm not an expert, but that never gets in the way of me expressing an opinion.
Perfect.
We do have a very large group within NYPA called Utility Operations, and they are embarking on a very new and ambitious build-out program in the transmission grid. And I don't want to pretend to know the names or the sizes or the dates, but I do know that the next 5 years to 10 years will be the biggest upgrade in NYPA's transmission system since probably the late 60s, early 70s. And I think the onus is on meeting various issues that the question actually raises, from offshore wind, which is being built on the island, and we're building, the transmission infrastructure to bring it on shore, to everything. That there's a new line coming down from Lake Champlain area down the Hudson Valley, for example. Plus, there's a new renewable attribute afoot called Tier 4, in which New York City is pushing for bringing basically, Tier 1 eligible type recs down directly into the city, and we're contemplating and building out a plan to build out the transmission infrastructure that would accommodate those needs. So we recognize, as one of the biggest transmission owner in the state, we recognize that we need to get busy building out the system to accommodate the changeover that's going to be required in the next 10 years to get off fossil and onto a more reliable renewable infrastructure. And similar to the NYSERDA challenge, we've been also negotiating for some new builds in the large scale renewable arena. And we recognize that every time a new asset comes on the grid, it disrupts the entire grid economics in terms of source and sink demand and the LMP numbers. So the more infrastructure we have in the transmission side of the equation, the easier it will be to accommodate the build outs that so many agencies and private companies and local governments are trying to accommodate.
Thank you. We'll take time for 1 or 2 more questions and try to wrap up by 3:15. This next question might be best suited for Sarah because it concerns the CLCPA goals, but anyone is welcome to answer. Owning a residential solar system, I'm very aware of the differences in generation of solar in the summer versus winter. I see about a quarter of the generation in winter that I get in summer. Solar or wind do not generate 24/7. I have gone a week with limited generation as well. So while promoting solar and wind is great, you need other generation sources to pick up when they are not generating, and that can be a substantial amount of generation in the winter months. Is that really in sync with the goals set to be about 70% renewable generation by 2035?
Well, I am not an expert on energy development, but I can say that I think that there are a lot of different types of clean energy that are being considered, and that storage is a critical piece of that in order to allow to meet the sort of variable the variable rate of energy production by renewable sources. I think probably Brian or Jen, you may have more expertise in this area than I do, but I believe our projections show that it will be an aggressive effort. You know, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think it is a doable goal.
Yeah, I would ditto the doable goal. I'm not in a position to go into all the nitty-gritty details of how we go about accomplishing it, but I can say I trusted my colleagues that have, put the work into the long-term planning and determined that we can do this, and it's not going to be overnight. And like Sarah said, I think energy storage is going to be a huge part of it. And that's one of the reasons that the state is supporting energy storage at the moment, not just financially, but with technical assistance and updated fire and safety codes and training and all of that stuff. I'm not saying that, solar, wind, batteries are the be all end all of the system, but they will go a long way in meeting those goals. I don't know, Brian, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, like I spent the majority of my career in competitive power markets, deregulated spaces. And I know, changing market rules and structures is a long and heavy lift. But the question is very relevant, which is, a capacity market can build out, reserve margins for the most peak demand months. You see what happens in Texas when you don't have a capacity market, and what can go wrong when you get one of these 6 or 8 sigma kind of events. But you're right, until we have a reliable replacement for base load fuels that can be stored and deployed at any time to meet peak demands in the system, it'll be hard to get off of fossil. And that's just talking about technology and economic realities, right? But I think it's one of these problems that the sooner we face it and tackle it head on, the better chance we have of solving it. Hoping for a technological breakthrough is probably not a sensible strategy, but working towards one is, right? So, but I agree with you. It's and then there's the whole political side of the equation, which is, can we really fight the fossil machine to push forward a sustainable effort? And it's going to take a lot of different constituencies and a lot of different stakeholders kind of coming together and pulling their oars in the same direction, because it's a well-funded industry and a well-connected industry, and they're not going to go down without a fight. So we just have to make sure that we address economic realities, we address structural realities and political realities to kind of lean and bend the arc towards a long-term goal, and recognize it'll take time, but we have to give customers what they need, when they need it, and how they need it. Solving the technology versus the sustainability missions is going to be one of the big lifts in the next 10 years. So I'm glad that so many of our sister agencies are focused on it, because we certainly are. And I think if we all work together, we can make something good happen.
Yeah, I think it's also important that we don't lose sight of the importance of energy efficiency in all of this as well. Just one little plug there.
Thank you, Jen. We'll take one final question and then conclude. Will site economics be evaluated, including costs to connect the facility to the grid? Will NYSERDA be able to reduce those internet connection costs if a desirable site is a bit far from the grid?
Those are definitely considerations, and that's what I was saying earlier. We face a lot of those same issues with interconnection as any other developer might. And if a site that we're looking at is too far or too far from a point of interconnection, or it's too expensive, we may not be able to overcome that hurdle in the short term. But definitely working with all of our, our partners across the state to solve these grid issues. I'm not the exact individual who's solving them myself. Do we have, any sort of special powers, if you will, to overcome those challenges that the private sector may not be able to? I mean, we probably have a little bit more flexibility to work at, state policy levels, to think about things that could change to make it better for everyone. I doubt we'll be doing anything major to make any individual project work. But yeah, it's a problem. We also face it. We're working to try to solve it, not just for individual, NYSERDA projects, but for everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Sarah Kroll, Jen Manier, and Brian Statten for your presentation. Thank you again to CPL, our sponsor, for sponsoring this webinar. You can find a recording of the webinar and a copy of the slide deck on our website by tomorrow at nysac.org/legislative conference. Thank you so much for attending this session. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.